Old money and new money, they don't just spend differently, sweetheart. They date differently. I was at a dinner party in Greenwich last month, seated next to a woman in a gorgeous vintage cable knit sweater that had clearly outlived at least one wealthy husband and 2 to 3 presidencies. She was the kind of woman who never asks what you do for a living, but rather where your last trip took you to. And she actually and attentively listens to your answer. She was restrained, deliberate, the human equivalent of a well-aged Bordeaux. Then a man across the table announced he'd just bought a McLaren. And she looked at him the way you look at someone who just told you their favorite restaurant is the Cheesecake Factory. With the quiet finality of someone who has never needed to say anything twice in their lifetime. He had more to add, naturally, but let's just say she was smart enough to turn to her wine the way you turn to an old friend at a bad party. And I sat there, watching 2 entirely different civilizations share caviar that nobody felt the need to acknowledge. And I was thinking, yes, there it is, as predictable as inheritance. You see, that dinner party wasn't a social occasion. It was a masterclass. Because most conversations about wealth and dating, the one mistake they make is they treat rich people as one group. And you better believe me when I say they are not. Old money and new money don't just spend differently. No. They signal differently. They mate differently. And the gap between them explains more about modern romance than any dating app algorithm ever could, or frankly, ever will. It is not every day I feel the need to quote data, but today I do, because as a woman, it'll spin everything you thought you knew on its head. So, a study published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society tracked more than 1.8 million online daters across 24 countries. The findings were, shall we say, not subtle. And get this, in every single nation, what researchers called resource acquisition ability, that's the academic way of saying money, power, and the means to acquire both of them. Well, in every nation, that money made you more attractive. But here is where it gets fascinating, and for you, sweetheart, slightly irritating. The effect worked almost 2.5 times harder for men than it did for women. 2.5 times. So wealth isn't just incredibly attractive. Oh no, it is disproportionately and structurally attractive in one direction. And as you know, the way wealth gets displayed, yes, that's where old money and new money part ways entirely. What the McLaren man was doing was exactly what Thorstein Veblen called conspicuous consumption. There it is. Wealth as performance. And that's exactly how Raya's founder, Daniel Gendelman, described applications they routinely reject. He said, and I quote, "A lot of applications are just a Lamborghini, a yacht, and a private plane. And we're like, see you later." A tech founder who understood the assignment. Imagine that. How charming. Raya launched in February 2015. By 2018, it had over 10,000 members and more than 100,000 people on the waiting list. One rejected applicant, whom I can absolutely confirm had to be new money, apparently offered $10,000 in cash for an account. $10,000 for the privilege of being considered. The unofficial admission checklist includes being rich or successful, objectively attractive, having at least 5,000 Instagram followers, and ideally 5 glowing referrals. Old money doesn't need referrals. Old money is the referral. Now, hypergamy. Ah yes, the practice of marrying someone of higher social status according to evolutionary psychologists. I personally just call it how the real world works. But anyways, the word was first used in 1881 in a book called Punjab Castes by a British officer named Sir Denzil Ibbotson. And that is where this particular conversation began. The concept is 140 years old, and the argument it created still hasn't been settled. Somehow, everyone involved seems very invested in being right about it. I find that more interesting than the data itself. Let me shock you a little more. The Institute for Family Studies found that in 2023, 63% of recently married young adult women, they were out-earned by their husbands. Barely 32% earned more. And that gap, it has barely moved since 2009, when it was 66%. The researchers, bless their hearts, came to this conclusion, which you and I, sweetheart, we knew all along. But here's exactly what they said. Hypergamy turns out to be a stubborn thing. It seems that the highly credentialed alpha female still prefers a mate above her pay grade. Imagine needing a study for that. And then, of course, along came a study to disagree, a rather massive one. More than 33 million marriages and 67 million births in England between 1837 and 2021. Yep. 200 years of data for men to figure out hypergamy. And the conclusion? Well, English marriages were remarkably egalitarian in terms of family backgrounds. Most people across all periods studied married their equals. The British, apparently, have always been tidier about this sort of thing. Whether that is a virtue or simply a very long habit of knowing one's place, that I'll leave entirely up to you. So which is it, you may ask? Both, depending on which country and which century you happen to be measuring. The pattern that is clear, however, is assortative mating. Rich marrying rich. According to one analysis, assortative mating accounts for roughly half the rise in household income inequality between 1980 and 2020. The rich are marrying the rich more efficiently than ever. The dating market is the sorting mechanism. And the algorithm, it turns out, is simply doing what historical facts in drawing rooms have always done. In the 1870s, American heiresses started arriving in Britain with railroad cash and mining stocks, looking to exchange them for the right to call themselves lady. This was the dollar princess phenomenon, a systematic trade of American money for British titles. The arrangement made perfect sense to everyone involved, except notably the women being arranged. British aristocrats needed money because running a country estate cost considerably more than it produced. And for a British gentleman to actually work for money was, of course, unthinkable. American families needed status because even Vanderbilt millions could not buy entry into the highest ranks of New York society. Money without history? Well, it is just money. And history? Well, in certain rooms, it's really the only currency that matters. And don't you worry, the concept made its way back stateside. John D. Rockefeller Jr. took the subtler route in 1901, marrying Abby Aldrich, daughter of United States Senator Nelson Aldrich, a political powerhouse whose influence stretched from Wall Street to Washington. By 1913, the Rockefeller fortune had reached $900 million, roughly $29 billion in 2025 terms, nearly 3% of America's entire GDP. The Rockefellers didn't buy a title, they married into political legitimacy. That is the difference between new money panic and new money strategy. One buys the costume, the other buys the room. Now, the data has been telling you about populations, aggregates, patterns across millions of people across centuries, and that is all very interesting. But you are not a data point. You are the woman deciding, perhaps without fully realizing it, which side of that dinner table you intend to sit on. Not which side has more money, specifically. More which side matches the version of yourself you are building. And that choice, it'll shape who you attract way more than your bank balance ever will. Rich men, whether new money or old money, simply do not care how much money you have. And some great news. Broke men, financially unattractive men. Well, dating coach Damona Hoffman told MarketWatch that she sees more men leaving the dating market entirely, too scared to participate if they cannot afford to, which is a rather extraordinary thing to happen to romance. I mean, it previously survived wars, plagues, and arranged marriages, but apparently in 2026, it cannot survive the cost of dinner in a major city. Oh well, the winner takes it all, as I like to say. Wealth keeps sharpening the divide. And fun fact, more than half of women in a recent survey said dating apps should include an income range filter for men. Smart babes, because private school isn't getting any cheaper. Match Group, which owns Tinder and Hinge, laid off 13% of its staff because its paid usership declined. Bumble cut 30% of its team. The platforms built to democratize dating are shrinking. The ones built to curate it, they are thriving. Some things, it turns out, cannot be democratized, taste being one of them. Here's the truth only I will tell you, darling. And the truth most women involved in this hypergamy conversation will refuse to hear. Old money men do not require old money women. They never have. But what they do require is a woman who is unbothered by wealth without being unaware of it. A woman who could sit at that dinner table, recognize the caviar for what it is, and never mention it. A woman who knows how to fit in his world. It's the oldest story in American literature. Gatsby's new money could never quite reach Daisy's old money world. But for you as a woman, you absolutely can and should marry up, whether it's into old or new money. Because these days, money is money, and composure is not inherited, it is cultivated. And cultivation, unlike a trust fund, is available to anyone willing to do the work quietly and consistently. I'll never know if the sweater woman across from me that evening was born knowing which fork to use or not. There is simply no way to tell anymore. If you are willing to do the work it takes to refine yourself, of course. And that is the entire lesson, sweetheart. As for the McLaren clown, I mean, man, he left early. He did mention something about a reservation at a place that had just opened. The woman in the cable knit sweater, yes, the one that outlived several presidencies, she stayed. She drank one more glass of wine and casually talked about the flowers and botanicals she was choosing to replant the garden at a house her grandmother had bought in 1958. McLaren bro was in a hurry to be somewhere impressive, but she was already there. They were attending the same dinner, in the same socioeconomic class, but operating in different economies of meaning, sitting 3 feet apart, yet living on different planets. I indulged in one more bite of the caviar. Since nobody else felt the need to acknowledge it.